I didn't care what it cost, what mountains we had to move. We had to do the right thing for employees and members. And we threw everything we had as a company at it.
Hello and welcome to Drive, the show where we join in conversations with Chuck about what moves us forward. And today we're tackling a tough topic. It's COVID and how do you lead through a crisis? Chuck, you ready for this one?
Of course. Hey, Alan, how are you?
I'm doing good. I appreciate your time on this one. I cannot imagine what it was like to lead as large of an organization as Coastal Credit Union through this incredible crisis. So tell us, Chuck, when did you first realize this is going to be real?
So we have a big credit union movement conference every year in Washington, D.C. We meet with policymakers, and so I was there the last week in February of 2020. News reports were starting to talk about, an outbreak in Seattle, cases in New York, various places around the country, and it was starting to hit the news in D.C. while I was there. And as I followed that, it's like, this could be a big deal. And this was the last week in February. So I came back at the end of that week, sent an email to one of my execs, and I said, don't we have a pandemic plan? We're required to have one. So she sent it to me, and that weekend I took a look at it, and I'm like, this isn't very specific. It's a good plan, it covers the basics, but I'm not sure this will carry us forward. And to me, it was like, oh, this is real. This could be a real problem. And so I pulled my team together the next Monday, and we just started talking about what if. The authorities started talking about lockdowns, closing businesses, and it's like, wow. Second week in March, we're ordering laptops and really beginning to gear up to an environment where we've got to tell our employees to go home. And it was, nothing prepares you for that.
I was going to ask you, was there a moment, Chuck, where you realized we have not anticipated something quite like this in our lifetime?
Yeah. And that was probably I think it was once the cases showed up in the triangle, then it's like, well, it's not somewhere else anymore. It's here. The other thing I'll tell you is, if you ever go through a crisis, and we all do it, particularly in the business world, whether it's losing a key employee, whether, any number of things can turn into a crisis. Learn from it. Be introspective. I'll tell you, the thing that prepared me most for COVID was leading through the financial crisis. And so there's a lot to be said for experience, and experience leading through crises or challenging times.
Well, I know in an earlier episode where we talked about leading through the financial crisis, you talked about prioritization and really lining up the team and getting alignment on the what's next. How did you decide in this case what was going to be the first priority for Coastal?
Well, it's easy because it's our culture, it's our business model, and our model is an employee-first model. If our employees, in the case of COVID, aren't safe, aren't able to take care of loved ones, aren't able to continue to contribute, even if they may have to be remote, our members aren't going to be well served. That was the easy part, is we got to do what's required to help employees. Once the stay-at-home orders went out, we had to figure out, how do we support our employees while continuing to enable them to work? They had little kids that were in daycare that suddenly are at home, that they got to care for. Some had elderly parents living with them that suddenly they needed care. And so we had employees that had responsibilities at home now that were going to conflict with work. And, there were a lot of companies that were bullheaded about that, but our employee first value said, we're going to figure out how to navigate. So we started down the path. We pretty quickly, in a couple of weeks, equipped nearly 600 employees to work from home. Fortunately, our IT infrastructure was robust enough and forward-thinking enough to enable that. And then it became, okay, how do we make this work? And then as we rolled into April, then we can't open the branches. Again, the focus from day one for the first 4 to 6 weeks was employees.
What did you learn about the employees during that time?
They're loyal to Coastal. They're committed to the work they do. But they also, family comes first. And if we take care of them, they will take care of the company and our members. And so a few things we did. So suddenly we have employees at home that can't work. The question becomes, are you going to pay them? Well, of course we're going to pay them. Whatever the situation, they're going to get paid. And we will navigate all that on a case-by-case basis. We ended up guaranteeing pay, I think, through September of 2020. Even for employees, because of their situation, we had employees got COVID, couldn't work for 2 weeks, they got paid. They were able to take care of their families.
So Chuck, during COVID, employees were struggling with just getting even the basics.
Yeah.
I know for me and my family, there was a lot of thoughts about we're not ready even on the most basic level. And I heard a rumor that had something to do with this.
Yeah.
And I need to know, is it true? Tell us about how Coastal responded when it comes to the most basics.
Oh yeah, so I was hearing from employees in my team that the grocery shelves are empty. It was on the news every night. My wife and I couldn't find toilet paper and paper towels. And like you say, we weren't prepared as individuals at all. I mentioned that Coastal I didn't think was prepared. We were even less prepared as individuals. So I know employees. I talked to an employee one day who had spent 3 hours going from store to store to store to try to find toilet paper. Couldn't find it. And I'm like, how do we make it easy? And so, we supply toilet paper, paper towels to our buildings. And we went to I had this idea, let's go to our supplier and see if we can get it. So we ordered 30,000 rolls of toilet paper and made those, either distributed it to employees in care packages, or we had days where they could come by the office and get like 30 rolls of toilet paper. We did it with hand sanitizer, masks, the stuff they couldn't get. I thought, I don't want them spending 3 hours running around town only to find out they can't get it. And if we can help, let's help. So one of the coolest things I think we did throughout the pandemic.
How did the employees respond?
Oh, with incredible gratitude, because it saved them time. More importantly, it saved them worry. And so it was a way to lessen the burden on them, and the feedback we got was incredible.
So Chuck, let's jump into just something I'd love to know your insight on. You previously had come out pretty strongly about we're a work-at-work company.
Right.
This changed a lot of it.
Totally.
Tell us about that.
I guess I'm old school. We're somewhat centralized. We had, 300 or 400 people in our headquarters every day. Well, we didn't have a choice as send people home, close businesses, and so forth took effect. And so we had to adapt. What I learned in the months and even year following that is it could work. The sky didn't fall. Service levels didn't go down the tubes. And our employees got creative in figuring out, in this new world of we're all at home, how do we keep serving members? And today, almost 3 years later, we're staying with it. We're not forcing employees back to our headquarters unless the job demands it. And there's some that do, that can only be done off premise. But what we learned is productive employees were just as productive at home.
Well, as we look around where we drove to today, we're at the Coastal Credit Union Music Park, and it's empty today, and it's sat empty for a long, long time.
Sure did.
We were dealing with a change in work. We're dealing with a change in play, how people went around their life, and obviously the great loss of life.
Yes, that's the tragic part.
How did Coastal's values play into some of your decision making?
They were the foundation of every decision we made. You know, a lot of people got laid off, lost employment as we rolled into the later spring and summer of 2020. And so suddenly we have members who have loan obligations, house payments, car payments that are reaching out to us saying, I need help. I don't have an income. I can't make this payment. The regulators over the entirety of the financial system said, look, you got to help these people. And we're not going to punish you or penalize you if you allow people to skip payments and so forth. And once we had that certainty, we went to work and we created a self-service digital capability for members to essentially defer payments on loans. And as a result of that, we had members defer payments for up to a year on 30,000 loans. And when they got their jobs back, they started paying again, and it was the absolute right thing.
What was one of the biggest debates that you had to lead through during this time with your leadership team?
There's no question it was really the vaccine mandates that the Department of Labor was trying to impose on companies. That created great heartburn for me. I personally don't believe that companies have any business dictating health matters to their employees over the threat of termination. And so I was totally opposed to those mandates. Fortunately, we never had to comply. I believe in following the law, both personally and as an institution. But I would have had a hard time enforcing those vaccine mandates on employees. And we had countless conversations among my team on that subject.
Chuck, if there was one decision that you could go back and do over, whether it was for employees or for your very, very important members, what decision would you change now with 3 years of hindsight?
It's a little tactical, but in early March 20, the most expedient way to allow our employees to work from home was to issue what are called Chromebooks. That was the right decision in the short term, but the wrong decision in the long term. And I think that's normal for crises. You don't necessarily have time to think about the long-term consequences of some of the decisions that are being made. You do the best you can, but the situation right in front of you needs a solution.
You've spoken on other episodes about decisiveness. How can you be decisive with so little information, and yet you're in the leadership seat and you have to go forward? What hint would you share with some of our listeners?
So, lack of deciding is deciding. Doing nothing is a decision. New situations like COVID, it's new ground, and it's urgent. We don't have 3 months, 6 months to figure it out. And so for the first 6 weeks, my team met every day, 7 days a week. And we had lots of debates, talked about next steps. Periodic times we didn't all agree, but we left those meetings with decisions. And sometimes the team and I agreed and we moved forward. There were times I said, here's what we're going to do. In a strong organization, as we are, people respect that and act accordingly.
sometimes history repeats itself. And we may have another pandemic. We'll
Sure.
certainly have some other crisis.
Yeah.
There'll be leaders that will follow in your shoes. What do you think will be your legacy from this time period?
Led from the heart, and focused on the people, focused on employees. Their well-being, first 2 months, was really the only thing that mattered. I don't care what business you're in, we're in the people business. And the minute we lose sight of that, we lose relevance. I didn't care what it cost. I didn't care what mountains we had to move. We had to do the right thing for employees and members. And we threw everything we had as a company at it. I didn't leave anything on the table.
Chuck, as we draw our time to a close, the folks who are watching, I'm sure, would love to know what were some of the lessons that you'd share with them.
You can't prepare enough for the possible but unthinkable. Pandemics have been talked about in the business community, the governmental community for years. We've known the threat was there. We didn't do anything with it. We need to do more to prepare for crises, whatever they look like. And I think one of the benefits of the COVID pandemic is we'll be better planners, better prepared for whatever the next crisis is. And so I would say throughout those early months, the most important skill was listening and have compassion. We all have some hardship or another, and the compassion to understand that and make a positive difference in the outcomes for everybody.
You talk about the personal impact of COVID on so many families. How did Gail support you during this time?
Like she always does. We've been married 35 years. She is a big part of my career. I couldn't have done it without her. She got tired of me working from home, so I went from traveling a lot and being gone a lot and working late at the office to being home 24 hours a day. And we made that work. But during those early days, it was 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And a lot of it's video conference. We got to know Zoom and WebEx. But her support was rock solid, as it's been every day for those 35 years.
Chuck, thanks for taking time to make it personal, to look back on a really, really tough time, and to just share with all of us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, that's it for this episode of Drive. We'll see you at the next one.